and the relationship than if I just light off about, yeah, and you're a clod, you're not sensitive at all, blah, blah, blah. Not helpful, not helpful, okay? When your partner says, you always defend your family no matter what, you might ask, what do you mean by defend? Or, who do you mean when you refer to my family? Your partner might be referring to particular family members, not all of them. He might mean I defend all of my family members with regard to certain topics. Or he might be referring to my unwillingness to talk about hurtful things one or more members of my family have done to me. So, three possible reasons why this person said this statement, and I'm going to suggest to you that those are just the three she came up with. There's many more possibilities, okay? We assume we know which one is active there, but very often we're wrong. Good morning, Joe. Welcome. Very often we're wrong. The wealth of information that can come from asking questions about 2 or 3 words can be amazing, even in cases where we assume we already know what the other person means. As Sally and Marcus increased their own ability to de-escalate their ongoing conflict around his moody withdrawal, good morning, Beth, happy Friday to you, Sally gradually asked more curious questions. Therein lies the rub. Make them curious. That's interesting. I wonder why he thinks this, said that, looks like this, blah, blah, blah. One day, when Marcus was seemingly in a bad mood, the following interaction took place. Sally, is something bothering you? Marcus, I'm fine. Sally, what do you mean by fine? Marcus, I mean I can take care of myself. I mean I can take care of myself. Good morning, Susan. All those years, Sally had thought that Marcus said fine to dishonestly indicate he was in a good mood. Now she realized he wasn't trying to deny that he was upset. To him, fine primarily meant he wanted to handle the problem himself. Well, holy balls, right? Wow. So many, many years. Good morning, Claudia. Glad you are here. Many, many years of her misinterpreting what that 4-letter F word, fine, meant to him. But when she asked one simple question, what do you mean by fine? She found out. He just wanted to fix it himself. He wasn't denying that he was upset. He just wanted to fix it himself. Okay? His response was based on the messages he had received from his father, his peers, and the overall culture about men not needing emotional support. So, can you see how asking the what do you mean by questions can lead to all kinds of ahas? All kinds of ahas. One simple thing. So what do you mean by blank? And asked in that kind of a tone, a curious tone. So you might need to take a couple of deep breaths before you ask the question in order to keep the edge out of your voice, as best you can, as best you can. Yes. Now, asking about our assumptions. Again, I'm saying here, oftentimes we misassume. So there's 5 possible things someone's utterance could mean, and we pick one that is not the correct one. So ask about your assumptions. In many cases, we assume we know what another person means, only to find later that a misunderstanding has arisen because of our misinterpretation. I'm sure all of us have had that, where you're having a conversation and it's going back and forth and it's getting more heated, and you get 5 exchanges down the pike, and you go, wait a minute, I'm talking about X. And the other person says, well, I'm talking about Y. You weren't even talking about the same thing. But you had this whole exchange that occurred because nobody stopped to go, wait a minute, something's not quite right here. Yes, exactly. There's another one for fine, too, that is kind of humorous. But yes. But we use that word, don't we? I'm fine. And oftentimes it's in response to the common query, how are you? And we don't listen to what people respond. We really need to. If we're going to, it's a figure of speech, but we need to own that figure of speech. If you're asking someone how they are, you darn well better be ready to really hear how they are. That's relationship, okay? We can directly ask about our own assumptions about another person's meaning, beginning with various phrases such as, so here are 3 you can write down, all of you. Do you mean? Are you saying? When you say. Do you mean? Are you saying? When you say. Okay? For example, we might ask the person to confirm or deny our own assumption about what is meant in the following cases. Excuse me. So in the first section, we were asking them to clarify a word. Now we're asking them to clarify our assumptions. When you say doctors are cold, do you mean you think they act superior? Do you mean that you believe professional women act cold as a way to command more respect? Are you saying that men are cold because you think they have a hard time talking about their emotions? So when you say, do you mean, are you saying? All good lead-ins to, so when you go for the holidays, you might want to write them on your hand. Carry your little 3x5 card in your purse, whatever you need to do so that you have these beginnings, or you memorize one. Just memorize one. And that's the one you're going to, well, do you mean blah, 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 or blah, blah, blah? No, I mean, and they come up with a third thing. That's fine. If you guess wrong, no big hairy deal. But the fact that you checked it out so you could be disabused of the mistaken belief is fabulous. Fabulous. In each case, we ask directly what we think the other person means by certain key words. We ask to find out if we understand what the other person is saying. It does not imply that we agree. So remember back in the book where the woman in one of Sharon's workshops said something about, oh, it's like charm school? And that phrase, charm school, poked a button for Sharon, but she managed to hang on to the reaction enough to ask with curiosity, what do you mean by charm school? And got a whole different thing than what she thought she was getting. She thought she was getting dissed, like, oh, isn't this a nice little thing we're doing here? And what the woman really meant was, charm school involved a whole lot of memorization, and I'm not good at memorizing, and I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to memorize these new ways to communicate with people. It was a whole different ball of wax. Whole different ball of wax. So her asking that question, what do you mean by charm school, was very important in clarifying and keeping that woman engaged, and Sharon not having a head of steam worked up about something that wasn't even the case. Okay? I am sometimes asked about the fact that such questions are not open-ended. The concern is that we are leading, not allowing the person to respond as freely as he or she might otherwise. If our assumptions are inaccurate, the other person will usually correct us. No, I mean this. I don't mean that. And if we don't question our own assumptions, we will hold them to be true, which then influences the relationship in a negative way, right? We thereby create possible misunderstanding and even solidify our assumptions into judgments. Well, he's such a jerk. He said blah, blah, blah. And we had the meaning of it wrong, right? Questions about quantity. This is our last little section for today. Questions about quantity. We can ask questions about quantity when someone makes a generalization about us personally or about a particular group. If my partner says, you always interrupt me, I can ask, by always, do you mean that I interrupt you every single time you speak? If he says yes, I have very different information than I would if he said, well, not every time, but usually whenever we're discussing plans, taking our summer vacation, putting in the hot tub, I think you get excited and don't wait for me to finish. Okay? And there's his assumption. I think you get excited and don't wait for me to finish. She then can respond, yeah, I do get so excited. I'm sorry I cut you off, but I'll work on that. Or, no, it's not about excited. It's about, I'm bored because you're taking too long to explain it to me. Just get on with it. Whatever it is. But it clarifies what's going on here. What's going on here? We can also use this kind of question differently. If a person says teenagers are demanding and lazy, we might ask, do you mean all teenagers, most of them, or just a few? in that person responding, good morning, Linda, glad you're here. In that person responding, watch how oftentimes it tempers their tone. So if they say, let's see, rich people are jerks, and you say, do you mean all rich people, some rich people, a few rich people? They might respond, well, no, not all rich people. So-and-so does a lot of philanthropic things, blah, blah, blah. They may temper their own tone simply because you've asked the question, right? So that, all of my coworkers are obnoxious. When you say all, do you mean every single one? A couple of them? A particular person? Well, yeah, there's this one guy. Yeah, the woman who sits next to me, she's fabulous. But this guy, he's just they'll temper a little bit because you've queried the always, never, all, none, all of that black and white kind of thinking that we do, all right? And the catastrophizing words that we use. This is terrible. I had a friend who that was her word, terrible. When you apply the word terrible to something, it really changes the feeling tone of it, right? So there were times when I would say to her, tell me what you mean by terrible. Well, not really terrible, just annoying. Big difference, big difference. People often gain new insights from answering a simple question about quantity or degree. Such questions are surprisingly effective in stimulating others to consider more carefully the accuracy of their statement, the degree to which they mean it, and what prompted them to mean it, or to say it. So, for instance, someone may come home from work with a head of steam built up because they had a rough day, and when you are asking these kinds of questions, do you mean this happens every day? Well, no, just today. That can make a huge difference in terms of how they process that. Yeah, I guess it was just today. Things were just off today. Tomorrow will be better. Whatever. All right? So I want to go back. Your homework is practicing, asking some of these questions. Even if this is, you're having a conversation with somebody today, it might be a coworker, might be your spouse, might be one of your kids, might be a clerk in the store, whoever. But you're having a conversation today and they put out a word, all right? I'd like you to practice asking, do you mean, are you saying when you say? Practice using those phrases. Today was just terrible at work. By terrible, do you mean you're not going back to work? Do you mean it was just a rough day? What do you mean by terrible? Asking for clarification. So I'd like you to practice that. Take some opportunities. Even if it's something that isn't an upset to you, it's just an unclear thing, and usually you just let it go. Practice the clarification thing, because we need practice. We need lots of practice. Okay? So do you mean, are you saying, when you say? Okay? So what do you mean questions? That's what we're practicing, the what do you mean questions. And one variation of that may be the asking about quantity, the always, never, etc. Okay? Have some fun with this. Let's see what you get. I'd love to have a couple of you come back, or if you can even think of a time when you did this, put it in the feed. Let's get everybody excited about how well this works to hold down conflict and keep people communicating in a direct, cool way. All right? Again, any of you who would like to receive these videos via email, you can send me the word yes to Bonnie@empowermentandpurpose.com. All little letters, all spelled out. Bonnie@empowermentandpurpose.com. The word yes, and I'll add you to my queue of people who receive these via email every day. So have an awesome day. We'll see you again tomorrow. Remember, you're capable of far more than you think you are, including asking these clarifying questions. Bye-bye.